What if the greatest thing stealing your peace is something you do every single day, without even seeing it? Most people spend years trying to fix their lives. Yet the real problem quietly hides inside the way they meet each moment. Ancient Taoist wisdom saw this long before our busy world existed. It points to a simple truth that feels strange at first, but becomes impossible to forget. If you stay until the end, you may discover that the calm you have been searching for was never as far away as you believed. Most people never notice the moment their day truly begins. It is not when they open their eyes. It begins with the first thought that rushes in before they have even taken a full breath. A list of unfinished tasks. A message waiting to be answered. A problem that has not yet happened but already feels real. Before the body has fully awakened, the mind is already running. The strange part is that this no longer feels unusual. It feels normal. We have become so familiar with constant movement inside our own minds that we rarely question it. Thoughts arrive one after another with almost no space between them, until silence begins to feel like something distant, almost imaginary. We tell ourselves that life has become more demanding. Yet perhaps what has changed even more is our inability to rest within it. There is always something asking for our attention. Some of it comes from the world around us, but much of it comes from within. We replay conversations that ended hours ago. We prepare for tomorrow while barely noticing today. We imagine better versions of ourselves, different futures, different choices. Even in moments that appear quiet, the mind often continues its endless conversation. We have learned to admire this constant activity. A busy mind is mistaken for an engaged one. A crowded schedule becomes evidence of importance. Rest begins to feel like wasted time, and doing nothing quietly turns into something we feel we must justify. Without realizing it, many people build their identity around movement. If they stop, even briefly, they begin to wonder who they are without the next task waiting to be completed. This is why genuine stillness can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Sit alone for a few minutes with nothing to entertain you, and something unexpected often appears. Restlessness, impatience, a quiet urge to reach for something, anything. That fills the empty space. Not because the silence is dangerous, but because it has become unfamiliar. We have practiced distraction for so long that stillness feels like a language we once knew, but can no longer speak. The exhaustion that follows is difficult to explain because it is rarely physical. It is the weight of carrying unfinished thoughts from one moment into the next. It is the pressure of constantly measuring where you are against where you think you should be. It is waking up tired after a full night's sleep because the mind never truly stopped working. Many people believe they are simply overwhelmed by life, when in truth they are overwhelmed by the endless activity happening inside themselves. What makes this condition even more subtle is that it often disguises itself as progress. We move faster, gather more information, chase more goals, and assume that peace must be waiting somewhere beyond the next achievement. But every destination reached quickly becomes another starting point. Satisfaction lasts only briefly before the mind begins searching again. The movement continues, yet something essential always seems just beyond reach. If everyone longs for peace, why do so many instinctively avoid the very conditions where peace might be found? Why does an empty afternoon create anxiety for some people instead of relief? Why does silence so often invite discomfort before it offers calm? These questions are easy to ignore because they ask us to look inward instead of outward. They suggest that the greatest source of unrest may not be the world itself, but the habits of attention we carry through it. This realization is not a criticism of modern life. Every age has had its own distractions, its own pressures, its own ways of pulling people away from themselves. The tools have changed, but the human mind has always been capable of wandering far from the present moment. What is remarkable is that this hidden struggle was recognized long before the world became as busy as it is today. More than 2,000 years ago, a quiet observer looked at human nature with unusual clarity. He noticed something that remains almost invisible even now. While others searched for better ways to control the world, he began asking a different question altogether. What if peace is not lost because life is too loud, but because we have forgotten how to listen beneath the noise? Long before the world learned to celebrate speed, there was a man who quietly stepped away from the race. He did not do so because he lacked ambition, nor because he rejected the world. He stepped aside because he noticed something that most people could not see. The harder humanity struggled to grasp fulfillment, the farther fulfillment seemed to drift away, while others searched for greater power, greater certainty, and greater control. He watched rivers carve mountains without effort. He saw trees bend with the wind instead of resisting it. He noticed seasons arriving without force, each one giving way to the next with perfect patience. Nothing in nature appeared anxious about becoming what it already was. This simple observation became the beginning of a profound understanding. The world was not held together by endless striving. It moved according to a quiet rhythm that asked for no applause. Day did not compete with night. The sky did not hurry the sunrise. A flower never compared itself to the one growing beside it. Everything unfolded according to its own nature, and because of that, there was harmony. Taoists called this invisible rhythm the Tao. The Tao is difficult to describe because it is not an object to be found or an idea to be mastered. It is the natural order that quietly supports everything. It is the way water finds the lowest place without losing its strength. It is the effortless balance that allows forests to grow, stars to move, and life to renew itself without anyone directing the process. The more Laozi observed this quiet intelligence, the more one question seemed impossible to ignore. If the rest of nature lives in harmony with this deeper order, why does the human mind so often stand apart from it? The answer did not lie in the world. It lay in the habits people carried within themselves. Unlike the river, the mind insists on choosing its own course. Unlike the tree, it resists every changing season. It argues with what has already happened and fears what has not yet arrived. Even moments of happiness are interrupted by the urge to hold on to them a little longer. While painful moments are met with an exhausting determination to escape them as quickly as possible, little by little, life becomes less about experiencing reality and more about negotiating with it. This quiet resistance is so common that it rarely feels like resistance at all. We call it planning. We call it improving ourselves. We call it staying prepared. Many of these things have their place. Yet beneath them often lives a deeper assumption that peace belongs somewhere else, somewhere beyond today's circumstances, somewhere beyond this version of ourselves. And so the chase continues, not because fulfillment is absent, but because the mind has convinced itself that fulfillment must always be earned through one more achievement, one more solution, one more perfect moment waiting somewhere ahead. Laozi saw the hidden cost of this endless pursuit. The more tightly we grip life, the more fragile it feels. The more desperately we try to control every outcome, the more uncertain everything becomes. Force promises security, yet often creates the very tension it hopes to remove. Nature offers another possibility. Water shapes stone without violence. The wind changes landscapes without argument. A seed never struggles to become a tree by pulling at its own branches. Growth happens because each thing follows its nature instead of fighting against it. Perhaps peace works in much the same way. Perhaps it is not something we manufacture through endless effort. Perhaps it is what quietly appears when effort no longer comes from fear. When resistance softens, something deeper begins to reveal itself, not a new reality, but one that was present all along. This is why Taoist wisdom does not begin by asking how to conquer life. It begins by asking whether life was ever the enemy in the first place. That question changes everything, because once the struggle with the world begins to loosen, another struggle slowly comes into view. It is quieter, more personal, and far easier to overlook. The greatest resistance is rarely found in the circumstances around us. It is hidden within the patterns of thought that shape how we meet each moment, often without realizing they are there at all. There is a battle that most people fight every day without realizing it has begun. It leaves no visible wounds. No one else can see it. Yet it quietly drains energy from the moment we wake until the moment we fall asleep. It is not a battle against the world. It is a battle against the way the world happens to be. The mind has an extraordinary ability to imagine different versions of reality. It compares what is happening with what it believes should be happening. It revisits the past, rewriting conversations that can never be changed. It rehearses futures that may never arrive. Between memory and expectation, the present moment is often treated as little more than a waiting room. At first, this seems harmless. Reflection helps us learn. Planning helps us prepare. But there is a subtle point where these useful abilities become something else. Instead of serving life, they begin resisting it. The mind stops meeting reality and starts negotiating with it. If only this had not happened. If only they had understood me. If only I could reach that next goal. These thoughts appear ordinary because they are so familiar. Yet beneath each one is this same quiet refusal to accept what already exists. Reality moves in one direction, while the mind pulls in another. That invisible tension becomes the friction we mistake for life itself. It is easy to believe that our suffering comes from difficult circumstances. Certainly, pain is real. Loss is real. Uncertainty is real. Taoist wisdom never asks us to deny them, but it invites us to notice something that often goes unseen. The event itself is only one part of our experience. The struggle against the event can become another burden entirely. Imagine trying to hold back the tide with your hands. The exhaustion would not come from the ocean. It would come from the effort to stop what was never asking for permission. In much the same way, many of our deepest frustrations grow stronger because we continue arguing with realities that have already unfolded. This pattern reaches into almost every corner of life. We compare our progress with someone else's journey and quietly conclude that we are behind. We measure our worth against achievements, possessions, or recognition that seem forever out of reach. Even moments of joy are interrupted by the fear that they will not last. Instead of inhabiting life, we evaluate it. Instead of experiencing ourselves, we measure ourselves. The ego thrives in this constant comparison because it survives by creating distance. It whispers that peace exists just beyond the next accomplishment, the next approval, the next version of ourselves. There is always another condition to satisfy before rest can begin. Yet every condition fulfilled gives birth to another. The finish line keeps moving because it was never placed in the world. It was placed in the mind. Perhaps this explains why certainty feels so irresistible. We crave guarantees because uncertainty makes the ego feel vulnerable. We want to know how every decision will unfold. We want relationships that never change, careers that never falter, bodies that never age, futures that never surprise us. But life has never made such promises. The more tightly we demand certainty from an uncertain world, the more anxious we become. Notice how much effort this requires. Every expectation must be protected. Every imagined future must be defended. Every disappointment must be explained. The mind becomes like a traveler carrying heavy bags across a landscape that asks for none of them. Eventually, it forgets that the weight is something it has been holding all along. This is the hidden source of so much restlessness. Not simply that life changes, but that we keep insisting it should not. Not simply that uncertainty exists, but that we treat uncertainty as an enemy to defeat. The conflict is invisible because it feels like part of who we are. We rarely stop long enough to notice that we are resisting almost every passing moment in small, quiet ways. And yet an unexpected possibility begins to appear. If suffering grows stronger through resistance, what remains when resistance begins to soften? If the struggle is created by pulling against the current, what happens when the pulling ends? At first, the answer sounds almost too simple. which is why it has been misunderstood for centuries. Many imagine it means giving up, becoming passive, or accepting whatever happens without wisdom or action. But that is not what the Tao points toward. It reveals something far more subtle, something that transforms the way we move through life without asking us to withdraw from it. The insight Laozi offered is often translated as doing without forcing, but those words can easily be misunderstood. They sound passive, almost as if they encourage withdrawal from life. Yet nothing could be further from what he observed. The principle known as Wu Wei is not the absence of action. It is the absence of unnecessary struggle within action. There is a difference so subtle that it is easy to overlook. Think of someone trying to push a river upstream. Every movement demands enormous effort, but nothing truly changes. Now imagine stepping into a boat and allowing the current to carry you, while you guide your direction with quiet attention. Both involve movement. Both require awareness. Yet one is built on resistance, while the other works with something greater than personal effort. Nature offers this lesson again and again. Water never appears impatient. It does not argue with the shape of the land or complain about the stones in its path. It bends where it cannot pass straight through. It slows when the ground asks it to slow. It gathers strength without announcing it. Given enough time, the same gentle water that seems incapable of resistance shapes valleys, smooths mountains, and carves canyons into solid rock. Its strength does not come from aggression. It comes from perfect alignment with its own nature. This is why Laozi returned to the image of water so often. He saw in it a quiet intelligence that human beings rarely trusted. Water never confuses softness with weakness. It yields without surrendering its essence. It adapts without losing itself. It reaches every destination not by dominating the landscape, but by responding to it with complete presence. The human mind often chooses the opposite path. When obstacles appear, our first instinct is usually to push harder. We tighten our grip. We increase our effort. We believe that enough force can bend reality into the shape we prefer. Sometimes determination is necessary. There are moments that call for courage, endurance, and disciplined action. Wu Wei does not deny this. It simply asks a deeper question: is your effort moving with life or against it? The answer is rarely found in how hard you work. It is found in the quality of your relationship with the moment before you. Consider a skilled musician. During years of practice, every movement demands concentration. Every note requires deliberate attention. Yet there comes a point when something changes. The music no longer feels manufactured. The hands seem to know where to go before conscious thought can intervene. Precision remains, but strain disappears. Action becomes effortless, not because less is happening, but because conflict has faded. The same mystery appears in countless parts of life. A conversation flows naturally when neither person is trying to control every sentence. An experienced craftsperson moves with quiet confidence because skill has become part of their nature. Even walking requires no conscious calculation, though every step depends upon remarkable balance. Some of the most graceful moments in human life happen precisely when we stop interfering with abilities that already exist within. US. Perhaps peace follows a similar pattern. What if the deepest form of wisdom is not adding more effort to every challenge, but learning when effort itself becomes the obstacle? What if control is most effective when it knows its own limits? These questions sound almost contradictory because we have been taught to admire relentless striving. We celebrate those who push beyond exhaustion, who force outcomes through sheer determination, who believe every problem yields to greater pressure. Yet anyone who has tried to force sleep knows the paradox. The harder you chase it, the farther it retreats. Happiness behaves in much the same way. So does love. So does trust. Some of life's most valuable experiences appear only when they are no longer being squeezed into existence. Wu Wei points toward this hidden rhythm. It is not laziness. It is not resignation. It is not refusing responsibility. It is a different quality of engagement altogether. It is acting without carrying the extra burden of inner resistance. It is responding instead of wrestling. It is allowing clarity to guide action rather than fear to drive it. Seen from this perspective, true strength begins to look very different from what we usually admire. The strongest tree is not the one that refuses to bend in a storm. It is the one that bends enough to remain rooted when the wind has passed. Flexibility is not the opposite of strength. It is often the reason strength survives. This way of living feels strangely familiar, as though we have always known it, but gradually forgot. Something within us recognizes the quiet logic of flowing instead of forcing, and yet recognizing it is one thing. Living it is another. If moving with life is so natural, why does it feel so difficult for the human mind to do? There is a reason silence can feel heavier than noise. It is not because silence contains something dangerous. It is because, for the first time, there is nothing left to distract us from ourselves. For a few moments, the endless stream of tasks, conversations, and obligations falls away. The room has not changed. The world continues as it always has. Yet something inside begins to stir. Thoughts that were buried beneath constant activity quietly rise to the surface. Feelings that had been postponed ask to be noticed. Questions that have waited patiently for years finally have space to be heard. This is the moment many people instinctively escape. Not always by reaching for a phone or turning on a screen. Sometimes the escape looks much more respectable. We become busy. We make another plan. We chase another goal. We tell ourselves that there will be time for reflection later, once life becomes less demanding. But later has a way of becoming another form of distance.
Life continued to unfold with the same mixture of beauty and unpredictability it has always carried. What changed was the place from which we were looking. That difference is small enough to escape notice, yet profound enough to change an entire life. For so long, peace seemed like a destination waiting beyond the next accomplishment, the next solution, the next perfectly arranged circumstance. We searched for it as though it were hidden somewhere outside ourselves, always one step beyond our reach. Every effort promised that if we only continued a little farther, we would finally arrive. Yet the harder we searched, the more distant it seemed, not because peace was absent, but because searching itself had become another form of restlessness. Laozi never offered a secret technique for escaping the world. He pointed toward something much quieter. He invited us to notice what has always been present beneath our constant effort to improve, control, and resist life. The Tao was never asking us to become someone extraordinary. It was gently reminding us that life already possesses a wisdom deeper than our endless attempts to manage every moment. The river does not struggle to become a river. The sky does not practice being vast. A bird does not rehearse its song before dawn. Each simply expresses its nature. Human beings alone possess the remarkable ability to stand apart from the flow of life, imagining that fulfillment lies somewhere beyond the life already unfolding before them. And yet we possess another ability just as remarkable. We can remember. Not remember through thought alone, but through direct experience. We can remember what it feels like to stop arguing with the present moment. We can remember the quiet clarity that appears when comparison loosens its grip. We can remember that stillness is not empty at all. It is spacious enough to hold joy without clinging to it, sorrow without becoming lost within it, and uncertainty without demanding immediate answers. Perhaps that is why this ancient wisdom continues to feel alive. It does not belong to one culture or one century. It speaks to something unchanged beneath every generation's distractions. The forms of noise may evolve, but the human heart continues to long for the same quiet understanding. Every age invents new reasons to hurry. Every age forgets for a while that life has never asked us to outrun it. This is why peace cannot be earned in the way we earn success. It cannot be collected like an achievement or protected like a possession. The moment we try to grasp it too tightly, it slips through our fingers, just as water always does. But when our hands relax, we discover that water was never trying to escape us. It simply refused to be held by force. Peace is much the same. It is less like finding something new than recognizing something familiar. Less like climbing a mountain than opening a door that was never locked. Less about becoming a different person than returning to the one who existed before fear, comparison, and endless striving convinced us that we were incomplete. The restless world will continue to move. There will still be deadlines, unexpected losses, joyful surprises, unanswered questions, and days when the mind forgets everything it has come to understand. That is part of being human. The Tao never promised a life without change. It simply revealed that we do not have to resist change in order to live wisely within it. Perhaps that is the ancient secret after all, not a hidden method passed down to a fortunate few, not a mysterious practice reserved for those who leave the world behind, only the quiet realization that beneath every thought demanding more, beneath every fear of what may come, beneath every effort to force life into certainty, there remains a stillness that is never left. It has been waiting with the same patience as the river, the mountains, and the morning light, not calling for attention, not asking to be achieved, only waiting to be noticed, and perhaps, in this very moment, it already has.